think we're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to start by having Emma introduce herself and tell us who she is, and whatever you want to tell us. I'm going to pretty much ask a bunch of questions that'll, get you through where you need to go. But I'm curious about, what you're doing, where you work, what you do, what you like. Tell us.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Emma. I am a web developer at a consultancy firm in Stockholm. So I live in Sweden, but I'm originally from the UK. I moved here like 10 years ago. And I've been a developer for the past year, decided actually to retrain 3 years ago and took like a 2-year course here in Stockholm. And before that, I was an elementary school teacher for about 12 or 13 years. Yeah, got very burnt out at the end of that, which is why I decided to find something else. Came across a short web development course one summer holiday and was just like, this is amazing. This is what I need to do instead. And so that's how I got into web development. And then I started getting interested in accessibility when I started finding out about it being a thing, like adapting things to different people's needs has always been something I've had to think about, like being a teacher, because I've always had kids with, sight issues or mobility issues, hearing issues, ADHD or autism. I've always had to think about adapting lessons and things to that. So it was kind of a natural thing when I started doing web development that, oh, okay, you actually need to think about these things even when you're making websites. And then when I was training, I did an internship at a consultancy company that focus on accessibility, and that like really sparked my interest in it. And yeah, been interested ever since, and just trying to learn as much as possible and teach as many people as possible about it as well. Like it's very it's there's not enough people know about it.
Right.
Just need to spread the word.
Right. So I don't know if I missed it, but how long have you been an engineer?
Yeah, so I started learning web development about 3 years ago, and as I said, I took a 2-year kind of diploma. They have a lot of like free education here in Sweden, where they offer these 2-year diplomas in lots of sought after industries. So I took a 2-year diploma in full stack web development, and I started my first job as a consultant web developer last year, almost to the day actually, or the 1st of August last year I started. So it's been a wonderful year
Wow.
working here.
That's amazing. I'm thinking about last year and I'm like, it feels like you've been doing this for like a couple years, but it really has
Yep.
been only a year. That's awesome. And you're already doing specifically web accessibility. Tell us about how that came to be, because you've only been working as a developer for about a year. You've been learning for about 3 years. But now you're directly in accessibility. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so like I said, I realized it was a thing when I did an internship at a consultancy that focused specifically on web development, web accessibility. I was working on an app for kids with autism and ADHD, so that when they go on school trips, they would get a visual timetable of everything that would happen with like images, so that they could be prepared. Like this is what's going to happen first, and then even under during the show, the theatre show, they would get like little pop-up questions happen. Like it's very interactive theatre shows that they were trying to develop. So it was like a really cool project. and I guess that's what got me interested in it. And I just realized that it's like it was never mentioned as part of my 2-year course. It was literally just the fact that I found out about it from my internship, that accessibility was a thing, and I just found it really interesting, and just continued from there really. Then so when I started at my current job, I immediately like tried to find out who was in charge of or like doing things with accessibility. Found out we have like an accessibility council, which is people from we have sites in Stockholm in Finland, like 2 places in Finland, a couple of places in Germany, and so every site has an accessibility representative. So I would immediately like, I want to be the one for Stockholm office and that kind of
Wow.
thing. And so part of that, and then yeah, then through work I got the opportunity to study for the CPAC exam while I was waiting for projects and things to work on. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am. My work is pretty flexible in like I can choose, like we have a few hours a week where we can study things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fairly open to choose what we want to study. So I'm now kind of trying to study for the web accessibility specialist exam and work my way up to that.
Right. So we're going to talk more about the CPAC and the WAS and talk about what those acronyms are once we start talking a little bit more. But I did want to touch on your experience as an educator, because a lot of the people who watch these videos or who are kind of following this web accessibility journey found me because I am a career switcher, specifically in education. So I think that's so cool to think about how people can come from these different backgrounds and how it kind of meshes together really well. I think people who work in education, especially teachers, and I was a therapist working in the education system, doing things like creating those digital visual schedules for kids with autism. It's like such a great marriage, I think, to work in accessibility, because you see directly how it impacts people, especially children. And the fact that you worked on an app for kids with autism and ADHD is like beautiful. That's so cool. So I'm going to get into a few more things. What languages are you using right now? Are you at your current work? Are you coding? Are you doing any coding, or are you just doing testing? Are you just doing kind of like auditing of things? Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so in my daily work, I'm just working on like a normal app using Next.js, mostly for the front end, and with TypeScript. There's not a lot of accessibility within that, although I was allowed to do an accessibility audit, and like all of the issues and things I found have gone into the backlog and get prioritized as and when we have time. But it's not actually part of like my day-to-day work, doing auditing and stuff at the moment. I'm hoping that as time goes on, I'll be able to get into a few more projects where that is a larger portion of my work. But at the moment, I'm just working mainly on it's a Next.js app mostly. Occasionally, we do some C# backend work, which is a little bit scary.
Yeah, I know
I'm
nothing about C
very
sharp.
bad. No, I'm very bad at C#. I only touch it when I really have to. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like right now you're doing mostly just front end, a little bit of back end engineering, and you are like the accessibility expert on your team in a way, because you're probably like the one person who wants to do it and has taken some time to learn it. I'm curious. Right now you're doing general engineering. Is one of your hopes to become specifically like a web accessibility engineer, where all you're doing is kind of looking at that?
Um, it's difficult to say actually. Like I really enjoy doing the web accessibility stuff, but at the same time, I also love doing like all the logic of just like the normal building everyday things. So I think ideally I would like to still be building, doing the general stuff in an accessible way, and then being the person that other people maybe come to and ask questions, and being like helping them out and guiding them on, yeah, well, like here's a pattern for how to build an accessible mega menu, or how to build a, I don't know, all the different components and things that you need. So yeah, I kind of think that I don't want to lose like the everyday building of stuff. I just want to help people build everything in a more accessible way.
Got it. So I know you want to do that for your job, and you talked a little bit about wanting to do that as you advocate for, I guess, for others, and getting developers themselves to kind of learn about that too. Are you doing anything special to help the community or teach the community that we're in more about web accessibility?
I am, yes. I feel like that was a good
Tell us
segue.
about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier on, one of the big gaping holes in education for web developers is just there's nothing about accessibility. I did a 2-year course. We didn't learn anything about accessibility. You take a Udemy course on front-end development, and there might be 1 or 2 lectures if you're lucky. So, and I think the best time to teach accessibility is, when people are first starting to learn. It's harder to go back and break patterns and habits later on when you've already learned how to make things, although it can be done. So I am putting together and you're helping me actually, putting together, I've got an open source project called Accessible Web Dev, which is aimed to be like a go-to guide for beginners in how to build accessible components. It's supposed to be fairly basic, hopefully easy for beginners to understand, because there's not a lot of stuff out there, and the things that are out there, such as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, are very difficult to read. And there are a few courses out there, but they're very expensive. So I'm just trying to put together something that is fairly beginner friendly, that people can use as a reference. Yeah. So yeah, I see you've dropped the link in the chat. Thank you.
I have dropped the link in the chat. I really, really love this resource a lot. The reason I started, that I learned about it was because we were following each other, but I don't remember what it was. We were doing a coffee chat or something. And I, at the time, wanted to build something similar, but mine was more like basically the same thing, but with quizzes instead. And when you told me you were doing this, I was just like, oh my God, this is so amazing and cool. Because I would probably never made it. You know what I mean? It's such a huge undertaking, and such I feel like it requires a lot of resources and a lot of people behind it. And the way that you guys created that website, it just looks so good. Like, I would have never thought to do it the way that you did. I'm actually going to share the screen and show everybody what it looks like. I have dropped the link in the chat in case you want to look yourself. But let me change my screen and hope that echoing doesn't happen. If you guys hear any echoes, just let me know. All right. So it's showing a weird screen that is not the screen that I'm on. So let me fix that. Oop, and you look kind of blurry for some reason.
Yeah, I was just wondering if
Oh yeah.
No, I think my camera is just having an issue.
What the heck? Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm gonna show you guys my cat really fast because I have to go help him, just so you know what's happening right now. Look at him. Mew, come here. Where are you? Come here, Mew. Oh my gosh. He basically has a bag around his head. I'm gonna go help him. I'm so sorry, y'all. Oh my gosh. Where are you? Okay, my cat. Why is he?
Oh,
Sorry about that. Goodness. All right, let me let me get back to the matter at hand and see where this thing is. Why is it showing a weird screen? It's showing. I wonder why it's doing that. I think I have this. I'm using a rectangle or something like that, and that might be why.
mhm.
But let me just fix it in the properties.
I think I also have to give a massive shout out to Sarah. I don't know her surname, but Lady Blue Notes for the design because she helped me massively with this.
Yes, Sarah. I love
So,
Sarah. Oops. Come on, screen. All right, it's not a stream with me unless I have technical difficulties. Okay, I think we have it up on the screen. This is the Accessible Dev webpage. It's something that I really wanted to talk about because it's a part of our discussion today, which is open source. And I've lost my screen again, myself. I have too many tabs up. Sorry, y'all. All right, here we go. So the really cool thing about this page is that you can contribute. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you can contribute to this because it is open source. So that's really cool. If you're interested in that, we need all the help we can get because all of these areas right here need to be filled in. So what I really like about this website is you can go through each of these areas and it will give you code examples and written copy about how to build those components accessibly. So I know the one that we did that's done that I just finished was the forms page. And I really wanted to do the forms page because it was something that I had just learned about during my own studies. And it was something that I found like a little bit challenging when I was building my own stuff. And I really wanted to understand it. But I like that the resources are also, you have your code examples and then you also have all of the WCAG, which is our web content accessibility guidelines, our little web accessibility Bible is what I call it, because that's where we get most of our guidelines internationally, are all right here. So you can kind of read more about these areas. So you can see that this has a bunch here, which is kind of intimidating, but forms just happens to have a lot. Usually there's like
yeah.
2 or 3. But with forms, you're dealing with so many different things that it's like, yeah. But you can go through all of these. There's also headings. This was the first one that I did. I kind of want to go back and do it again, but for now it's going to stay. I think we also have one for images. So understanding how to write good alt text. Accessibility people talk about alt text a lot because it's like the most basic thing that you can do to help out people who can't see what's on the screen or people who use screen readers, which I talk about a lot. Not only blind people use screen readers, a lot of different people use screen readers. And it's like the number one thing that people forget about. So good alt text, talking about decorative images, how to code that so that the screen readers or whatever other people are using for assistive technology is not reading to them something random that they don't need to hear, which is annoying. But yeah, it's really thorough. As you can see, this is all about alt text. And then it just has all of these here where you can kind of read a little bit more. So this is a really robust website. But as you can see, oh, there's breadcrumbs. I feel like that's new.
I did that one a couple of months ago, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
that one is
great.
fairly new. Yeah. And I'm currently working on the navigation page.
Nice.
But yeah.
So I don't know if this whole time my screen has been moving or not showing you all this stuff. And I feel like it hasn't been because I can see that it's frozen. So that's a me problem. I think something is weird with my share screen that I'll just have to fix later. So I'm sorry that you guys couldn't see all that. I'm going to try one last time to see if it'll work and then give up on it. display capture, right? Display means you're going to display the whole thing. Yeah, okay. I wonder why it's not doing anything. That's so bizarre. I don't know what that's about. All right. It used to work and now it doesn't. So we're just going to go back to our big screen. But check out the website. So now that we're talking about web accessibility and we're talking about open source, let's really get into it. First of all, how can people contribute to this project? What do you need? What are your like wishes? And what are some easy issues for people to put in?
Yeah, obviously, like there's a lot of content that's missing at the moment. So if you feel that you either already know about how to do things accessibly, or you want to spend some time learning and are interested in writing some sections, that's always really, really helpful. Um, I'm always putting up issues. Like I know there's actually still some issues on the site. Like I noticed the other day that you can, if you open like the theme picker and then you open the when it's on a small enough screen, if you open the hamburger menu at the same time, then they overlap each other. I need to raise an issue for that. But if you want to go and test the site and find any issues, or even if you read through some of the information and like, this doesn't really make sense to me, always happy to get like issues raised that things can be made more clear, or write it in like just because it's already written doesn't mean we can't go in and edit it and make it better. So I'm always happy to do things like that as well, or for other people to help out. So I think that there's a link to the GitHub for in the footer of the website, if you want to go and have a look at it and see. There are a couple of issues already open, but there are definitely more issues that need raising and that I haven't added up there at the moment.
All right, I added that to the chat as well if you want to check it out. So speaking of raising issues, well, one thought I had before I forget it is I like that you were talking about looking and testing the site, A, and then B, looking at how you could make things more clear and how, like maybe if there's any typos or anything. I think that open source can be really, really intimidating for a lot of people, especially for the newer developers, even for developers who've been doing things for a while, but just aren't comfortable or haven't really done open source contributions. That could be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but a lot. I think for the newbies, things like testing a website, combing through the copy, thinking about like how things can be made more concise, or if things are like too wordy or too confusing, just raising that issue so that people can see it. Those are really really big things. They may not be like you're building this whole component, but it's just as important for people to actually be able to use the website. I also wanted to mention to you, Emma, I meant to tell you last week, but I have a coworker. Her stream is on Sunday if we actually do it, but she's blind and she also knows how to code. And she's an auditor with me. So we don't do any real coding at my job. We mostly do auditing and testing and things like that. But we talk a lot about GitHub, and she actually went on the website. I was telling her about it. I was like, you should contribute, blah, blah, blah. You know how to code, it'll be fun. But she was like, oh my gosh, I went on and I saw there was a typo I need to put, and I was like, you should put in an issue. And then we started talking about the accessibility of GitHub itself. And this is something that I've been really, really interested in and really wondering about as just like a series that I kind of want to do, like how accessible is making a pull request, how accessible is going in your IDE and then pushing something to GitHub, things like that I just really personally have never had to think about, because obviously I'm not a daily screen reader user. But I still wanted to hear from you if you've thought about any of those things, how accessible you think GitHub and the whole process of contributing itself is.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. I mean, I haven't tested GitHub myself. I've seen that they've been releasing recently quite a lot of content around accessibility. That they've employed new people in order to look at the accessibility. So I think that, I mean, I've seen comments that it's not entirely accessible, but I do think they are aiming to make it better, and which is great. And I think Visual Studio Code quite often when they have their release notes, quite often says, because obviously Visual Studio Code is one of the main IDEs that a lot of coders use, and I see that they quite often mention like, oh, we've improved this for screen reader users, or that kind of thing. So again, I haven't tested using a screen reader in VS Code. I'm sure it's an experience.
I know. So, speaking of that, I was talking with Dorlin and another blind coworker who also, I wouldn't say he knows, not that he knows how to code, but he knows, like, he can read it and understand, and he knows whatever. But they were both telling me, and this was a few years ago, so I hope that things have changed, right? They were telling me that they cannot use VS Code or most IDEs because they're not accessible at all, and they write their code in notes. Like they use like they use like the notes within, or the text editor within the computer, and then they paste it wherever they need it to go. I thought that was really interesting, and no one thinks about these things, because I didn't think about it, and I'm in this field. I'm like, dang, yeah, how do people code? How do people do things like that? So I'm really excited to kind of like mess around with that. So Todd, hey Todd. Todd is in the chat, and he said that the W3C has many GitHub repos, and that he's heard that while it's not optimally accessible, that it's somewhat accessible and getting better. I know from personal just hearing and seeing and talking to people who work at GitHub that they are building their accessibility team right now, and really trying to prioritize accessibility, which is interesting. Yesterday, Todd and I had a conversation about where the space is going and what has changed. And we both noticed that a lot more companies are more interested in accessibility and trying to make it a thing that they do. So we'll see if this sticks and if it actually starts getting better. It's very exciting times, I think. Dr. Tony Fast said, I wonder how many issues open source projects miss feedback from affected users because the issues are so tedious to access, and the custom templates are complex forms now. 30 tabs to make a new issue. Yeah. So what I think about a lot, and I want to talk about it, is while I do have some disabilities, I think that I'm brilliant, right? I think that I'm real smart and that I can figure anything out, which is why I figured out how to do a lot of things. But when it comes to GitHub, A, learning it made me cry. B, doing a pull request and all the steps that it takes to open an issue, and okay, gosh. That's my sister's cat that I'm cat sitting for a year for. She likes my desk. Anyways, that made me lose my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh yeah, it's just so complicated to open an issue. Why? Yeah. I feel like it could be so much easier. Tell us about that. Like, what do you think?
I honestly agree. Like, there have been times where I've wanted to contribute like an issue to, I'm trying to think what it was, if it was like the Next.js documentation or something, and just to, or if it was a bug report or something, but just to do that, they wanted so much information. Like they had this, as Tony mentions, like a custom template, and you needed so much information, and replicate this, and what's your operating system, that, and that. By the end, I got halfway through the form, I'm like, you know what? I don't care. Keep your issue. I just gave up. So I do have I have issue templates on my repositories as well. But you know what? If you want to delete them and just write whatever you like, then yeah, there's nothing that you have to fill in.
Uh-oh, Emma. I'm gonna look at your templates. I might have to roast you. You know I'm a big old roaster. I'm not gonna roast you. You're too nice for that. If it was someone else, I would though. What do your templates look like? I'm actually curious.
Oh, mine, they're not very detailed. They're literally just like, I don't remember now. I need to maybe have to look.
Also, while you look, Todd said that VS Code has gotten better. He's tested with a screen reader and it isn't perfect, but it's far better than it was a couple years ago. And I figured that was the case because one of them had used it like 3 years ago. And I think my friend, my partner who I work with, she did it like maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And then she just gave up and she uses the text editor. And I was like, no, I'm going to test, like, let's just use it. Maybe I'm like, it's a Microsoft, even Microsoft tries, they try. We won't talk about it, but I was like, at this point it has to be better than it was 2 years ago. So I'm kind of excited to talk to her about that and see if she can actually use it. So thank you for that, Todd.
Yeah, my issue reports are just like in Markdown. So if you want to just delete anything or not fill anything in, then yeah, just don't. And but it's just like describe the bug, what are the steps to reproduce the issue, what are the kind of expected behaviors, and that kind of thing.
Okay, so
But
how?
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, if I'm writing a bug, I quite often don't fill them in anyway. So yeah.
So it sounds like yours are more like guiding questions that you would want to answer
Yeah.
anyways versus just like something completely ridiculous, like 30 different things for one issue. I would give up after 5, to be fair, which is ironic because you want people to do those issues so that it can be fixed. My other beef with it is, well, I don't know if this is a tech thing or maybe my expectations are too high or something, but I feel like a lot of the times the people who would be the ones who would want to put in accessibility issues, if there was an accessibility issue, it's just so complicated that they just wouldn't be able to. So that's just something that I think about sometimes. But, it is what it is. It's never going to be perfect, but I'm going to ask a few more questions. Check the time. Got some time. All right. So what is your favorite thing about being an accessibility engineer?
Oh, interesting question.
Or should I say doing this kind of work? Because you're a full stack web developer, right? Is that your official title?
Yeah, something like that. I think I've just written like software developer or something like that on LinkedIn. Yeah. My favorite thing, I don't know. I'd say I kind of get a kick out of doing audits and finding things that are wrong with other people's websites. That's just, I don't know, quite fun.
Yes, that is also my favorite thing. I was at work on Wednesday having the best time ever, which is, I've never had the best time ever as an occupational therapist, but right. I mean, I have, but like this was like, oh, I'm like hitting flow for some reason. But I was telling my friend who found your issue, I was like, I think I just like this work is so satisfying to me because I just love like finding things and then talking mess about it and just being like, these people. It just like gets that like need out of me, and I'm like, oh, I found another one. It's so satisfying. I'm like, what is it about it that I just love? I don't know. All right. So what should people do if they want to start in open source? Like, where should they start?
Okay, if you want to start in open source, definitely start small. Find like projects where you can make changes to documentation, like find the small typos and fix those, or like I said, if something doesn't make sense, or if it could be clearer, suggest like editing those kind of things. That I mean, it's kind of hard to suggest certain projects, and I find it quite difficult to find projects to contribute to that are like pure web dev. Like
Right.
if anything tells me I need to like set up Docker or anything, I'm just like, nope, that's too hard. But I keep an eye out for projects on like Twitter for people I follow, and then I'll go and check their site and run like an accessibility audit. You can do like if all you've got installed is Lighthouse, even running a Lighthouse check through Chrome, you will definitely find, given the fact that like 98% of websites have accessibility issues.
Correct.
If you run a Lighthouse audit, you will find something you can raise an issue. If it's color contrast issues, if it's like images missing alternative text, headings being in the wrong order, these are all very, very basic, very common mistakes. So that's kind of how I started. Was I would go to websites, run an accessibility audit with like Lighthouse or Axe DevTools is my favorite. And then I would just like raise issues for these, and I'd be like, I can fix it if you want. So I actually started on, I've done some work on EdiHub has a project called Linkfree where I did a lot of accessibility testing. Then I've also done the Node.js documentation is really friendly and easy to contribute to. So I like tested their site, and and as I say, I tried to do it on the Next.js, but that was way too hard to raise an issue. So I'm like, nope. Free Code Camp is pretty easy to get up and running as well. And they're really keen on having like accessibility issues fixed and that kind of thing. So there are projects out there. Some are smaller, some are bigger, but definitely like look for typos, look for the easy wins, the low-hanging fruit of like run an accessibility test and see what's there. If you then want to check it with like keyboard and see if that works, that's like a next level thing, but that's also great. But there's so many different kind of things you can test with accessibility on all of these projects that you could like, you'd have never-ending issues to be able to contribute to the different projects.
So I feel like what I struggled with the most as someone who really wanted to get into open source was A, finding a project, and then B, just being like, okay, I found a project, now what do I do? Because there's all these open issues and I'm so confused and I don't know what to do. And I honestly got lucky because I ended up just going all in on yours and just being like, this is my open source project because I cannot be bothered. However, I really like what you said about just opening up a tool. So as we talk about tools, we'll segue into what your favorite tools are if you're trying to do a quick and dirty, just like assessment of a page. Like what do you mentioned Lighthouse, and what I want to do is kind of open up Lighthouse if I can. I figured out my screen issues, but I want to kind of show people whichever one you think is good. And then I'm going to also, while you think about that, read some of these comments so that they don't get too stacked up.
So Lighthouse is inbuilt into Chrome. So if you don't want to go and download anything, that's a great place to start. My favorite tool is an extension called Axe DevTools. Which I think is you can get it on Chrome and Firefox and Edge, I believe. And that is, you like right click and inspect the page, and then you can access it there and run a test. And that will usually bring up quite a lot of different issues. And then I usually cross-reference with a couple of other tools. There's one called Wave, which is also an extension. I'm not a massive fan because I find the way that it puts all these random icons in the page kind of throws me off and makes it hard for me to find where I am and find which issues. But I know a lot of people do like it. So that's just a suggestion. And then there's also another one called Microsoft Accessibility Insights, which will allow you to go through like the WCAG criteria. It will also allow you to check things like heading order and that kind of thing.
So you said,
and I think it allows you.
I haven't heard that one. Microsoft
Accessibility Insights, I think it's called. Just going to double check now.
Oh, I haven't. I'm pretty sure I haven't used this one. I'm going to put this in the chat for y'all and also in our little notes page. Tools.
And the good thing with the Microsoft Accessibility Insights one is you can actually check off, like, if you're doing an audit, you can take them one by one and check them off as you do them.
For the Microsoft one?
Yeah.
And it's just like a download?
Yeah, it's an extension. So it adds it as an
extension.
icon. Yeah.
Because I'm like, Windows, no. All right. I'm going to add this to my Chrome. Add extension. All right. And then I'm going to just quickly use it and see what it got. It's this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So let's just do fast pass real quick. See what happens. Opens a new thing. Well, of course it's going to say 0 because she uses this and this is hers. But I'm scared. I'm going to use it on my website. And I haven't worked on my website in ages, so it's just like going to be embarrassing. I don't even want to know. But we're going to do it anyway. I need to like completely fix this thing. It's like just it's a mess, but run a fast pass. Please don't embarrass me. Expand all. Okay, so my link name. What's going on with my link name? Can you tell me what happened? Why is it mad at me? I don't think I've looked at this. This is probably not written correctly. Okay, I see. I don't have any labels probably for this one. I think that might be connected to also like a little icon thingy. Yeah. So if you're looking at this, right, knowing that this is a YouTube icon, can you tell me how I would change this?
Okay, so if it's saying that it doesn't have an accessible name, I'm guessing. Yeah, links have discernible text. So one way you could do it is by adding an area label into the link, and that will then be read out. Some people say that that's not a great thing, like the area labels don't necessarily work very well with translations. So they suggest using like a screen reader only class, which kind of hides the text from view, but it's kind of a hidden page, so it would get read out by a screen reader.
Right.
So there's different ways that you could do it.
Okay, well, speaking of which, while you're here, I'm just going to ask you, please, can you help us when we do ARIA and JavaScript? Because I'm going to be so embarrassed. I don't know how to do any of this. You're already talking about it, and I'm like, wait, this is actually like week 3 of the study group is literally ARIA. And I've only just started learning about it, and now I understand the concepts, but like writing it, I will be doing it for the first time live when we do it during the study group, I think. Like I've done it before, but I've done it
Well,
like
they're
haphazardly,
saying
not
there's
really understanding.
lots of echo.
Oh, you know what? Let's transition back to our thingy then. Transition. All right. I'm guessing you will probably be able to hear me better now. Let me see. Lots of echo, audio source. Okay. Yeah, I have to figure out what I need to mute in that source. It's probably the browser that I need to mute, but one of these days I'm going to have a stream where I just like test things and hang out with people, I guess, before we start doing all the other stuff. But thank you. All right. So that was what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the comments and read them out for our people who are not able to see what's on the screen. And then we'll get back into it. All right, so we know Todd said that VS Code has gotten better. Dr. Tony Fast said they're better at open source than they were. I think we could agree with that one. Andy, what's up, Andy? Andy's in the house. Andy said larger open source CMSs like Drupal and WordPress really need contributors, but the barrier to entry is quite high, especially for newbies. Starting small is definitely good. Yeah, so that's the problem. I mean, I feel like I can speak on this as a newbie because I'm not like the seasoned person who's like, oh yeah, I'm doing like, all this stuff. But it's so hard to find, like it took me, I'm not kidding. It took me like 5 months of just like being overwhelmed and trying to figure out like which thing to contribute to. Cause then I was like, okay, I just need to find something, right, that like I'm passionate enough about to want to contribute to on top of all the other stuff I'm doing. So I was like, maybe if I do open source screen readers like NVDA, I can open up an issue or something. And then I go on NVDA's page and NVDA's doing all this. They're like, here's the issues. And it's like stuff that I'm like, how can I help? I don't have to do any of that stuff. So, one piece of advice that I will amplify that Emma said that I hadn't made that connection. However, that's exactly how I started and how many people I know started. Get into your community. Twitter, we talk about Twitter a lot because that's how I met most of the people that I talk to. But Twitter is so great because there are people talking about their projects that they're working on, and people like you and me who just need help with whatever they're building. Those are the kind of projects that you may want to look into because A, it's a smaller project. B, people will be extremely grateful for anything that you like contribute to a smaller project. Even if it's like, I found a typo, they're gonna be like, oh crap, thank you for finding my typo and caring about my small project as well, right? So I always talk about like going to where you're wanted and needed and supported, and one of those ways to do that is to connect with people like personally, and then connect with people who are doing these projects that aren't these massive projects where you're just another piece of noise that they have to deal with. So I really like that. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, definitely agree.
All right, I'm going to read some more of these. Drupal is notoriously bad at accessibility, or they used to be. Todd said he hasn't used them since V8. And Dr. Tony said open source accessibility gets so hard when there are complicated build chains. The distance between the source code and final markup increases the challenge. Yes. It is hard. So when we're talking about open source specifically and accessibility, we're not even trying to do anything that huge. I would just say literally just look for a typo and do your first issue, period. Don't even worry about fixing or building or adding to the code. Just look at the copy, look at the design, look at how things are made, and start there. That's your actionable step that will actually get you out the door, and not doing what I did, which was being paralyzed by the fear of moving for 5 months. That's incredibly ridiculous. The same thing happened with me with streaming, which we will talk about very shortly. For Emma, not me. All right. So Andy said the latest default theme for Drupal 10 prioritized accessibility, so they are improving. WordPress has people dedicated to accessibility, but the folks at the very top don't care enough about it. So the new content editor has tons of accessibility issues. Todd said, good to know about Drupal. He doesn't touch WordPress anymore since all the drama with the top people.
There's always drama.
Oh my gosh. I'm not going to say names on here, but WordPress is interesting. I accidentally see the drama for WordPress all the time because people talk about it on Twitter, and I'm just like, this is actually wild, but we won't get into that. Let's see. Accessibility Insights is a great tool, is what Todd said. And then Todd. The first rule of ARIA Fight Club is don't use ARIA unless you have to. The first rule of ARIA is don't use it unless you really need to.
I'd want to add to that as well. If you do use ARIA, you have to check it with a screen reader. You can't just put it in there and hope for the best. If you're going to use ARIA, you have to check it. So,
yeah, definitely. In general, one thing that people don't do, and I feel them on that. I feel y'all, okay? I hear it. I feel it. I see you. We're right here. It's really, no one tests with the screen reader. And it's, I think, a very intimidating thing to try. It can be, right? It just seems like a bizarre thing to work with if you've never done it before. But if you are a developer, please, if you have a Mac, use VoiceOver real quick. It's just a couple commands. If you're a web developer, you can figure it out. If you have a PC, NVDA is free. And then what's Narrator? Narrator sucks, but it still is a screen reader that'll work and comes with your computer. Just mess around with it and close your eyes and go on whatever you're building and see if you can navigate it without opening your eyes. If you can't, that's okay too. If it's your first time using a screen reader, because that can be difficult, but open your eyes. All right, don't close your eyes the first time, but open your eyes and just try to navigate using the tab button and get around your websites and see if it works that way. Todd also gave us a good resource. If you don't have NVDA, assistivelabs.com. You can use that for reader testing. JAWS comes with the higher tier plan. Of course they do. There's also another resource that I feel like no one uses, but that I've used because of the trusted tester, which is Andi, ANDI. And that was created by the Department of Homeland Security, I'm pretty sure, and that's their own accessibility checker. I'm scared that if I share my screen, you're going to hear me echo again, because I really want to show you all what it does. It's just it's not even an extension. It's just something you click on, you save it on your, let me just look for the link and put it in there for y'all. But what I like about it is that it shows you the output of what the screen reader would say without you having to use an actual screen reader. At the end of the day, using a screen reader is way more better than using Andi. However, at least for those who don't want to use a screen reader or can't, Andi will give you that information. So I'm going to just drop the link in there so you at least can take a look at it. And it's not the Department of Homeland Security. It's actually Social Security Administration who is the one who did this one. Okay. So let me put that in there. Bam. For y'all. Oh, Todd already put it in there. Sorry. I wasn't current on the chat, but Todd knows what's up. I'm actually curious about what you think about Andi. Todd. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm not looking at the chat correctly. I see that I'm not the only one who likes Andi. Andi also likes Andi. That's great. Todd and Andi like it. I respect them, so I feel good about liking it now. I will say the T is, because I work with blind people who are very opinionated, and I love that. They all are. They're like, they don't like Andy because they're like, just use a screen reader and do it manually. It's better anyways. And I'm like, I feel y'all. That's the truth. Keep telling people that. But Andy is a good
There,
in
there are
between.
times, when, and I can, like, I don't know how blind people do it sometimes because screen reader voice drives me insane. It's like, I probably shouldn't say that. It drives me mad. But yeah, I sometimes you just get enough of the screen reader voice. So maybe seeing the output with no voice is
Yes.
necessary sometimes.
Right. The only
But
problem
usually,
with any tool like this would be every so often it gets it wrong.
yeah.
That's the caveat, which is why we always, if this is like what you do as a profession, you know that you're going to have to use a screen reader, period. It's just part of the audit process. But if you're just trying to just start learning and do it at all, and there are some barriers, you can use this. My trick for the screen reader is I increase the speed each time until I could listen to it so fast that like it wasn't even, well, I mean, it's still annoying, but it would just be like blah, 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 and it's done. I'm like, I heard that in 2 seconds. I read a paragraph. So it kind of comes in handy. All right, so we're gonna wrap up a little bit. I'm gonna ask you a few more questions and then open the floor for any questions that people may have. Let me get my questions back up. All right, I think I had a couple more questions. Um, so the last question not the last question, but one of the last questions I always like to ask is if you have three pieces of advice that you would give someone interested in web accessibility as a career.
Wow, yeah, that's a good question. What would I give as advice? I'd probably say start small. There's a lot of information and it's very overwhelming. You're not going to learn it all at once. It's going to take you years to get good at this. You're probably going to feel like an imposter a lot of the time when you learn something, especially if you like me. I learn something, I'll tweet about it, and then someone will be like, "No, that's wrong," and I'm really like, "Okay." So that's probably my second piece of advice: is don't get put off by the people that are grumpy or tell you it's wrong. At least you know if you make a mistake and you make a mistake publicly, you learn from it and then you do it right the next time. And there are some. Most people in the space are very, very helpful, but there are a few grumpy ones. So just don't get put off by the grumpy ones.
You're stressing me out right now.
Um,
Oh my gosh. I,
um, and what would be my third piece of advice? I guess it kind of relates back, like, don't be afraid to ask. Like I've said all the way through, like, the material that's available to learn about web accessibility is difficult. It's not written for beginners to understand. There's a lot of very, very knowledgeable people, but all of that information is kind of locked in their heads, and we need to find a way to get it out.
yes.
Don't be afraid to ask. Most people will help, and yeah, be be a don't be willing to make mistakes because we all do it, and we're just trying to, get that little bit better every time, and that would probably be my tips for getting started.
Yeah. Y'all find a community. Find a
Yeah,
community. ask questions, find all the nice people in accessibility. We all hang out in the same spaces pretty much, and ask a lot of questions. Like my anxiety, something me and Emma were talking about before we started, because I think she's going to start streaming, and doing a little, I don't know, we're going to ask her about it. But one of the things that I struggled with, especially last year before I started streaming, just like it took me 5 months to do open source, it took me about 6 months of literally hyperventilation, anxiety to start streaming. And most of it was because I felt like the community would roast me. Like I thought that people would be really mean. I don't know what I'm doing. I just get on here and I kind of just code and hope for the best. But what I found is people are so nice. People will spend hours with you, helping you out with coding, because it's such a niche thing, right? Like we're just like I always say, we're just excited that like you want to do it too. So tell us about streaming, whether or not you're going to do it, and if you're going to do it, and let's say even if this is hypothetical, what you would like to do during your streams and what you would like to teach people.
This is the second time I've talked with someone today about streaming. So
It's a sign.
it sounds like it's a sign, like I'm going to have to try it out at least and see what happens. And now
Todd
Todd's telling
said
me to
do
do
it.
it.
So now you have to.
Okay. So I guess as part of building the Accessible Web Dev website, I am like trying to put together like my own set of accessible components that I can then use as examples on the website. So I'm guessing that would be a good thing to like sit and show people, like on Friday. No, what day is it today? It's Friday today. I'm so lost on the day because I'm on vacation right now. When was I doing it? Wednesday or Thursday? I was sitting and just messing around in a code pen trying to work out how to build like a mega menu, and how to like make it lose focus when you tab out of the last element and all of that kind of stuff. I think something like that would be great to stream, just like me messing around trying to build these components and then add the accessibility features into them and testing them.
Emma,
So
get out of here. Guess what we're doing? Guess what we're exactly doing for the study
we're gonna
group?
we're gonna do that.
Literally, that's what the whole group is. That is
I mean,
so
that's,
cool.
and I know that is what you need for like to be able to do for the web accessibility specialist exam as well, as you need to know all these different components. So I mean, that's another reason why I want to learn how to do it and then have like
Right.
references to fall back on later on.
So we're actually using the body of knowledge for the WAS as our study guide outline, and then I'm taking the deck course that goes through all of the elements and kind of shows you a little bit of how to do it. It doesn't, the problem is it just kind of tells you about it. It doesn't like, it's not like here's how you exactly do it. So
Yeah.
a part of what we're doing is figuring that out, and I'm like really scared to do that live. So if you ever want to like come do it with us,
Let's do it together.
because I'm just gonna be on there like tinkering around and just being embarrassed. But yeah, we're literally gonna open. So CodePen, speaking of accessibility, my friend, she's blind, and she said that CodePen, she was doing, I think, free code camp, and she had to stop at the point where they used CodePen because it wasn't accessible. So I decided to use Replit instead because it seems like it might be more accessible. But since you're using CodePen, and I think when she used it was a few years ago, I'd love to hear. And that's something that I was going to do, but I'm like, since you're already using it, I'd love to hear about how accessible you think it is. Probably
Yeah,
haven't,
well,
you haven't like looked
no,
into it, huh?
I'm not using it for the coding side of things, but like I test with a screen reader on the section that I've coded, and it seems to be okay.
Okay.
But obviously, I don't use it for the writing of the code. I just use it to test the output of the code.
Yeah.
So it could be different there.
Speaking with her, it's been interesting because I've been realizing like I don't like wow, all these tools that we use, we don't test because we just don't think about it. And I'm like, but there are blind coders, like people who use screen readers or things like that. But I just thought that was interesting. Think about it next time you use it.
I will.
But that's really exciting. We would love to join you anytime. Whenever you start, I'll shout you out and make sure everyone comes to watch. That would be so cool and very strange that you're doing the exact thing that we're already going to do. I told you it's a sign. It's a sign. All right, so let me just make sure I don't have any other questions. So if anyone's still with me and you have questions for Emma, please put them in the chat. We'll answer all of them. We're gonna be here for about maybe like 5 more minutes as we wrap up, 5 or 10 more minutes. But I have like 2 to 3 more questions left. But what do you think? And you're in Sweden, so this will be an interesting thing for you to answer because I'm in the US. Maybe our job markets are a little bit different. But what do you think the top areas of like need are for developers right now? It doesn't have to be about accessibility, but just things that you've noticed.
I think accessibility will actually be one of the top things, especially in the EU, because there is a new law that's been introduced, and companies have until June or July 2025 to start complying. And that's every kind of e-commerce website, transport, banking, anything that can be linked to being like necessary for a person to live in the digital world. Like you have to be able to shop online. You have to be able to use your banking. You have to be able to book train tickets or bus tickets or flights. That is all being made like into law, so that I think that is going to become it more and more.
I had to
I don't know what you're doing.
plug my computer and it was about to die. Sorry.
It's
I'm listening, though. I can hear you.
um, sorry, now I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, the European laws, like it shouldn't take a law to make people do it, but unfortunately that's the world we live in. So it is becoming like more of a requirement. What else do we see over here? Full stack web development on the whole, especially still React and that kind of thing. And then data and that kind of thing. Anyone that's like a data analyst, even going into the AI a little bit, I would say is also probably going to be quite popular in the next couple of years. But I don't know so much about the AI and the data and that kind of thing. But
Okay, that's a pretty good answer. I'm really interested to see how that EU law goes. I've been kind of been hearing about it and reading about it. Dr. Tony Fest says that they wanted to thank you for your scheduled tweets about accessible HTML. They learned a lot. Thanks. What is that? What do you mean?
I haven't done any scheduled tweets for a while now, since Twitter stopped most of the API
Yes.
things from me.
Lame.
But I want to thank you, Dr. Tony. That's very kind of you. Yeah, I haven't been scheduling for a while. I need to find a way to do it again.
That's awesome. Okay, so is there any last words of wisdom or something that you would like everyone watching now and who's going to be watching later on YouTube to walk away with?
I would say accessibility, it's hard, but it's fun. don't be afraid to get started, and don't be afraid to reach out to people in the accessibility field that you see tweeting about it, because they will most likely help you. We want to help you. We're super like, we're those kind of people that you come and ask a question to us and we will info dump about accessibility for like an hour, 2 hours. We're just
It's
like, yes,
embarrassing.
somebody that wants to, yeah.
I'm always like, wow, people want to learn more.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of learning more, we've pretty much concluded the questions. Obviously, I would love to have you back at some point, but as we are learning, I'm going to always be plugging the study group. If you're here and you want to learn more about web accessibility, we have the study group that's coming up in September. And I have Emma, who just told us that she's down to teach us about ARIA. So so we will have her on with us to speak about ARIA. And one thing I love about Emma, she's very helpful, especially when I'm streaming and I'm embarrassing myself by not knowing what I'm doing. She's always in the chat giving encouragement and then also answers about what's happening or how to help me like code and help others. So if you're a part of the group, she'll be in the chat sometimes whenever she has the time to do that to help us out as we're studying. And as we're studying, she will also be studying because she's studying for the WAS, which is really cool. We didn't talk too much about the CPAC, but that's okay. When we have an info stream about that stuff, we'll talk about it some more. But I think that is pretty much it. I don't think anyone had any more questions. I'm just like really happy that you came and you spoke with us. It's been very inspirational to see you on Twitter talking about all the things that you're doing and then seeing you help everyone out so nicely. You're like one of the nicest people in the space, seriously, so approachable. And the resource, Accessible Web Dev, is just such a great resource for everybody. So I really encourage anyone watching, if you are interested in contributing to this, especially if you want to do some writing and some copy, reach out. You can reach out to me and I'll field you over to Emma. If not, Emma, can you please put your Twitter in the chat for everyone and any of your links that you may want to give people? When I do this Google Doc write-up, which I'll probably have to everyone next week, because I'm going to wait till I do my last stream on Sunday, which should be at 1 p.m. I think it's at 12 p.m. or something like that. I'll tweet about it, but I will get all three of those together and then give all the resources for everyone. Because the whole point of this for me is just to get people excited about accessibility, have them learn a little bit, and make sure that all these resources are free and easy to access as we build the community, because those are the things that I think are really hard to come by. So thank you so much for joining us. It has been a blast learning more about open source and how you can contribute and more about accessibility, because I definitely learned some new things and got some new resources and little tools to mess around with. All right. It's been real, y'all.
I said thank you for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. All right, everyone. We will see you maybe on Sunday. If not, definitely next week we'll have another one of these coffee chats with someone else. All right, signing off now. Have a good one, y'all.